This video describes the military situation in Ukraine on the 2-4 of August 2023. Hello, you are on the View of the War channel, and here we are discussing what changes have taken place on the Ukrainian fronts over the past day. Videos come out every laziness. Subscribe, like, and we start. On August 24, 2023, a number of events took place about the landing of the Ukrainian DRG on Tarkhanket and the consequences of false reports. At night, from 224 high-speed boats landed in the Elenovka area on Cape Tarkhanket, conducted demonstrative firing from a grenade launcher at the camera and departed back, from where they came to Balachia Beam. This is the second incident in the Cape area in the last few days. Only recently, the APU conducted a combined attack, as a result of which the S-300 air defense system was destroyed, and now they have already landed on the shore. The activity of the armed forces of Ukraine for the Crimean Peninsula is becoming increasingly high. For a reason, the APU has been probing the ground near the Crimea for several weeks, looking for loopholes for an amphibious operation, for which the British were preparing them. And Tarkhanket is the most convenient place for this kind of action. The coastal line of the Cape is almost at the same level with the sea, which makes it ideal for the approach of small boats. And if it was just an ostentatious sorting out, what prevented them from climbing the hill and hitting a military facility there? The fact that Ukrainian formations are planning operations in the Crimea is already a fact. The situation on the front line and the fighting on the Starobilsk direction without major changes. The armed forces of the Russian Federation continue to gradually squeeze out the APU from the defensive lines in the area of Sinkhavka. In some areas, Ukrainians are attempting to counterattack in small groups. One of these episodes occurred in the Novoselivsky area, where the AFUD-RG tried to approach the Russian positions unnoticed, but they were opened by a UAV. In the Soledar direction, the situation in the vicinity of Bakhmut has relatively stabilized. After several unsuccessful attempts, the AFU again switched to staffing units and preparing for new attacks. A large number of dead and wounded in the assault formations forced the AFU to adjust its plans. In the 2nd Battalion of the 3rd OSPA of the AFU, only 28% of combat-ready personnel remained, and less than half of the regular equipment. Currently, in the area of Konstantinovka and Belaya Gora, there is an active training and coordination of assault detachments of 92 OMBA, 57 OMBA, and 24 IDAR Battalion of 5 OSPA of the AFU, which are planned to be used on the southern flank of Bakhmut by the second wave. In the first echelon, 14 assault groups of the National Police Brigade LUT are now preparing for an attack. 8 of them intend to storm the height of 195 for at Kleshayevka to force the Russian troops to retreat from the village, and the rest plan to move along the railway tracks in the direction of Andriivka and Kurdyumovka to block the approaches to the Kurdyumovsky Triangle. At the same time, in the north, in the vicinity of Seversk, there is also a concentration of 6 assault groups of the armed forces of Ukraine, which indicates a possible activation on the part of Razdalovka. 10 OGSPA and 54 OMBA have been intensively preparing reserves for an attack in recent weeks, so it is quite possible that an offensive from several sides is synchronous in time. After the capture of the harvest, the situation at the Vremyevsky site temporarily stabilized. The enemy is restoring the combat capability of the battered parts. Nevertheless, the APU continues to roll with small forces in the direction of the cherished desire. Single samples of equipment are being attacked. Russian artillery and aviation are working on the rear positions of Ukrainians in the area of Makarovka and Staromayorsky and on the outskirts of the harvest, preventing the Ukrainian formations from accumulating a reserve for a breakthrough. In the area of Pryatnoy, the Ukrainians tried to wedge themselves into the defense with up to 2 tanks and several infantry platoons, but were scattered by Russian artillery and pushed back. At the Orekhovsky site in Rabasino, the assault groups of 82 OGSPA of the armed forces of the Russian Federation have entrenched themselves in its northern part and continue the assault. continuously delivering artillery strikes on the units of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. The situation there is still difficult. At the moment, the fighting has already shifted to the southern outskirts of the settlement, which, after 3 months of clashes, repeated the fate of other villages and almost completely turned into ruins. At the same time, Ukrainian formations continued their onslaught on Russian positions east of Rabadino. Judging by the scale of artillery training, they will soon try to take an assault and make their way to the recruitment in order to create a threat from the rear to the forces of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. In Novopokrovka and Novokarlovka, in Protokarki, the tactics of the armed forces of Ukraine remain the same as 2 months ago. They are trying to enter reconnaissance groups and gain a foothold in an abandoned settlement. Fighters of the armed forces of the Russian Federation identify activity and strike at enemy manpower. In the Kherson direction, Russian troops destroyed a Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance group that tried to land on the left bank of the Dnieper River between the settlements of Berpia and Kardashinka. At least 3 members of Ukrainian formations were killed during this sortie. Shelling of rear areas and residential areas. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation reported on the night interception of 3 aircraft-type drones. 2 of them were shot down in the Bryansk region. Another one in Kalagath this morning. The AFU shelled the village of Belaya Berezka in the Bryansk region. As a result of the attack, the power supply was disrupted. In the evening, Ukrainian formations shelled the Kursk region. At least 3 arrivals were recorded in the village of Tetkino. There are no injuries or injuries. Several houses were damaged in Elizavetovka. Local residents reported the shelling of the settlements of Bezimino and Mikhailovka in the Belgrade region. Official information about the victims and destruction was not received. The intensity of the shelling of Donbass by the armed forces of Ukraine has increased. They fired more than 300 shells and carried out 90 attacks on the Donetsk agglomeration and neighboring settlements. 13 house buildings and 4 objects of civil infrastructure were damaged. Alexandrovka, Gorlovka, Mikhailivka, Novobakhmutova, as well as Stara Mikhailova and Yasinovataya were also under fire. Ukrainian formations continue to strike at the settlements of the Zaporozhye region. In the village of Navoy, Tokmuk district, 1 person was killed as a result of shelling. Today, the armed forces of Ukraine struck at Novaya, Kakhovka, Kosonka, Berpia, Staraya Zberyevka, and Dnipro in the Kherson region, causing damage to civilian infrastructure. Political events about the crash of the plane E. Prigozhin. According to some reports, the investigation is working out a version of the detonation of an explosive device placed in the landing gear compartment on the plane. After that, there was a separation of the wing, explosive depressurization, and the transition of the side into a corkscrew. Other sources claim that the bomb could be in the area of the bathroom. Rosaviation published a list of 10 passengers and crew members on the plane, in which, in addition to Prigozhin himself, Dmitry Utkin, the senior commander of the Wagner PMCs, and Valery Chekalov with the call sign Rover, who was responsible for the company's logistics, are listed. The bodies found at the crash site were badly damaged, so they were sent to Moscow for genetic examination. Contrary to reports about the alleged identification of the remains of Yevgeny Prigozhin and Dmitry Utkin, there was no official statement in this regard. The situation around the plane crash is strongly influenced by the public conflict between Prigozhin and Shoigu, because of which part of the population has already appointed those responsible for the tragedy, even before the investigation begins. At the same time, the situation contributes to the emergence of a variety of theories and hypotheses about what happened in the information field. There is also speculation about the future of the Wagner PMCs on the web. Western resources report on the beginning of the withdrawal of the company's personnel from the Republic of Belarus and publish satellite images of the dismantling of the field camp. However, as the Belarusian security official noted to the channel, in fact, The dismantling began in mid-August and is associated with secrecy considerations. The future of Wagner PMC's projects depends on several factors, including the rational use of assets, the preservation of the logistics system, and the initiative of those involved in the company's affairs in Africa and other regions. One thing can be said with certainty: Russia for some reason ceases to pay sufficient attention to its projects in the Car, then the president of this country will be the first to take steps to fully return to the French orbit of influence. In the case of Mali and Burkina Faso, which have cut off public ties with Western states, there are no such concerns yet. Vladimir Putin commented on the plane crash. He called the incident a tragedy. In his opinion, Prigozhin is a man of difficult fate, but at the same time, he was a talented person and a businessman. In particular, the president noted the merits of Prigozhin and the Wagner PMC group in Ukraine and Africa. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like this video.